ad hoc committee to order. We do have a quorum present today, so we have supervisors Frank, Caro, myself, and then Mr. Undihan from the Richland Center School Board is here. So we have 4 out of 7, so we can do our business today. So agenda item number 2, proof of notification. Ms. Dole, I think you posted that in the hallway yesterday afternoon as you were leaving. Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 3, agenda approval. So we've got a 15-point agenda today.
I'll so move to accept that.
Okay, motion by Frank. Second by Caro. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Okay, we're all in favor, so the agenda is approved. Agenda item number 4, public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment today? Yes, is it Mr. Schmidt? If you could just come up to this microphone here.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know this committee has a huge task ahead of you, whether to go for a referendum to raise the levy or to make cuts. And what I'm hearing in the public, talking with people, is on the cuts, how do you arrive at a cut to a certain department? What do you use to make that decision? And maybe some departments need more money. Maybe some could work with less, but just to throw out a number of 350,000 for across 3 or 4 different departments, that's kind of vague. And I think you need some information to justify what you propose to cut. I think you could go to some of our neighboring counties, Lafayette County, Juneau County, see what they are spending, for instance, per mile or something like on the highways, just to get something, what it cost per citizen here in Richland County for the people going through Health and Human Services doors. Very easy to do. Population divide by the dollars spent. See what the other counties are doing. And, you know, just because we here in Richland County have been doing things over the years for a period of time may not be right. It might come down to management. Why are these other counties getting along and Richland County having this, I would call, severe financial problem? There's a reason. The public needs to know that. So I would encourage you to do that. Get the information to us and let us know. And also, I noticed on your printout here that I got, there's several additions. And an addition of a full-time county maintenance director. I question that. The addition of a full-time radio tower coordinator. Well, maybe that could be worked into some other agency we have here now. In addition of a full-time finance officer, we have a treasurer. Why do we need somebody else? And then that is also, I think there's 350,000 probably to put in the office for computer equipment and different things for that financial officer. And then a full-time HR coordinator. I talked with with some of the people who manage their offices and departments. They say, I can handle my employees. I don't need somebody in the courthouse that they can run to, and then the HR person will come back to the director anyway for the issue to get settled. I don't see that. We're in trouble right now financially. Why put all these frills on that we don't need? Let's wait until we get financially situated where that might be justified. So that's what I'm concerned about. And if we're going to make this to the public so they can understand it, let's see some figures to justify what you're doing. We can understand that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. We really appreciate hearing your comments, and I know several of us were taking notes, and I'm sure you'll be interested to stick around for parts of this, or if you'd like, we'd of course welcome you to stay, because I do think several things we're discussing today are relevant to your comments. I just want to also welcome Assemblyman Tony Kurtz. He's in our audience today watching, and so just wanted everyone to know that he took the time to come here, and we welcome him as well. Okay, so unfortunately, I was not able to get meeting materials in time to the help desk, I'm assuming. Oh, they're out there already? Wow, they are amazing. I sent them at 5:35 as I was rushing out the door at home, and I CC'd the help desk. So I think if you refresh your folders for the county board members who are in the room right now or who are watching, you should be able to find the materials there. Couldn't the public find the materials on the public website as well? Okay, so if anyone else is watching, you can go to the committee's website and there's a packet. And then of course, for Mr. Mvihan, you have to go there as well, since you don't have iPads from the county.
How many documents should there be?
Mr. Chair, I think you missed number 5 as well.
Okay, Ms. Dole, can you say that again? I'm not quite, got a couple questions coming at me.
Okay, sorry, I think you missed number 5.
I missed number 5 on the agenda. Oh, you're right, I did. So we'll get to that. And then Mr. Frank, your question was how many documents should be there? I believe it's 8 documents should be in the folder.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
A little more volume, please.
Okay, we'll try to kiss the microphone for you, and maybe Mr. Cooey can help us as well. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so agenda item number 5, approval of minutes. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the August 22nd meeting.
This is Bob, also move.
Okay, motion by Frank,
Carol seconds.
second by Carol. All those in favor of the minutes, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So we've got approved minutes. So that takes us to agenda item number 6. And that one is Public Education Information Report. So at the last committee meeting, we did approve a report. We spent a good chunk of the meeting going through people's comments on the report. And so the documents you have before you today, I'm just going to explain first, high level. You've got one document called 06A Public Education, and that one is a new document. It's our document from last time with some changes. The second document is 06B Public Education Track Changes. And there what I did is I turned on track changes, so you can see strikeouts and you can see new language added in red and underlined, so you can track what happened since the last meeting. So does the committee have a preference as to which document we have in front of us? I know that Mr. Langrek is probably there. Yeah, he's got both documents up right now. If no one has a preference, I think.
Mr. Chair,
Yep, go ahead.
I think for myself, I prefer the tract, but I can work with either.
Is that any objection to using the track changes document? Okay, so this is going to be 06B that we're using. So this is a 27-page document. It's about 11 pages longer because of all the deletions that happened. So I think the biggest change by far in this document is thanks to Mr. Unbehan. He went through and made a lot of new charts for us that look a lot better. So you'll see charts stricken out, and then you'll see it replaced with new charts. So the county employees chart that Mr. Langreich just went by, it's stricken out. That's the old pie chart that shows our 280 employees and which departments they're in. And then he made two charts for us. And so I added both the charts into the document, and we can keep both the charts in the document if we'd like, or we can choose one. So if you just want to take a look at those. And then Mr. Frank and Mr. Carroll, it'd probably be great to hear your opinions on this first, since we've got the author sitting over here and he probably wants to know what we think. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Mr. Carroll.
Yeah. I like the bar type better than the pie, but I will say that the font and text size is a little challenging.
On the column graph,
Correct.
the text size is a little challenging on that one. Okay.
Correct.
Mr. Frank, do you have thoughts?
Moment, say.
First of all, I think they're very informative. They're very good, and I think we should keep them both. I think they both tell a little different story in kind of the same way, but I like the percentage breakdown and some of those things. So at this point, I really like them both. I think they're both good helpful information.
Okay, great. So maybe if the font can just be increased on that first one, then I think we'd probably be good. Is there anything else, Mr. Carroll?
I would just say that it strikes me we're going to have to strike a balance between brevity so people look at it, but having enough information there that people can really delve in as far as they want. So I'm not sure. I don't mind two graphs, but we need to keep in mind this education thing can't get too big.
So I totally agree with it can't be too big. It's got to get to the point. But I'd like the idea for me is having the two graphs is depending upon the group you're talking to or what education we're doing, you can pull one out or highlight it. The entire document is there, but as we're speaking to people, we're going to be highlighting sections for different purposes and different activities out of the core document.
Yes, and so I'd agree with Mr. Frank on that. I don't think we want to get it to be too big either. But this is intended to be sort of like a document that we do pick and choose from. So we don't have to use all of these. So for example, Steve, if you give a presentation at the Towns Association meeting in the county later in the month, you could, for example, just pick one of these charts out to show that group. You wouldn't need to show both of them. Okay, so let's keep moving on here. There's no other comments. On the next page, there's one new sentence added. We had some comments at the last meeting that it was important to, if you keep going down, there we go, right there. It was important to point out that there are departments that receive outside revenues, and sometimes those outside revenues have to have matching monies from Richland County. So that was said at some point in the conversation, and that's the place where I chose to stick it in here. Then the next chart here, of course, this one gets struck as well. This was the orange and green one from last time. So this is the chart that shows each department's expenses and revenues. So expenses were in orange, revenues were in green. So the new chart that replaced the old one, this shows revenues in orange and expenses in blue. And it's sorted by the least to most net impact to the property tax levy. So I changed that title a little bit. So if you go a little bit further down, Mr. Langreich, to the chart, the black one right there. I added a new title says sorted by least to most net impact to the property tax levy. So if you take away the revenues from the expenses, the resulting amount, that's what is on the property tax levy. So if folks have thoughts on those two changes, that new sentence and that new chart.
Is this the one with the horizontal bars?
It is, it does have horizontal bars. There might be more than one, however. This one has orange and blue bars on it.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on the horizontal charts. Because the titles of the departments are so long and so big, back to what you were saying earlier, with the font size being small, the way that first chart laid out, I switched it around so that it went horizontally. And even still, some of the titles are so long that we may need to shorten them up, but it fits better on a horizontal axis just because of the links of those titles.
Yeah, personally, I thought that the chart was, it was easy enough for me to read. At first, I thought maybe revenues should be green and expenses should be red, but that's kind of Christmassy. And really, it didn't take me that long to understand this. You know, it jumped out at me pretty quick. So I don't know what you all think about that.
Just left the default colors on it, but it can easily be changed to whatever we want. It's a 10-second change.
Okay, thoughts from Mr. Carroll or Mr. Frank on that one?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Yep, it's fine.
Okay, great. We'll keep moving then. So here in other interruptions, we'll just keep going here. So on the top of page 7, we have the old chart that shows our total expenses of 36 million and then our total our total expenses of 36 million and then our total revenues of also 36 million, but it just divides it out into the property tax, which was in blue, and everything else, which was in orange. So the new chart here is a little easier to read. So right there, maybe much easier actually. It was, the other one was pretty difficult to read. Okay, so we'll just keep on going here.
Where is the page number?
Oh gosh, we're on page 8 right now, or we were on page 8. We're going to page 9.
Is that in the upper right-hand corner?
We could add page numbers. Okay, good idea. We'll add page numbers, Mr. Seat. Good comment. Okay, so on the top of page 9, this is the one that has paragraphs at the top that are numbered 1 and 2. So just text on this page. So there was quite a bit of discussion at the last meeting about when we talk about shared revenues from the state, we need some context about why are state shared revenues declining, what happened along the years. So I did add a sentence here. This gets into state law about what the county can do with taxes. And I added a sentence that says, according to the Wisconsin Policy Forum, the state implemented an earlier version of this law in 2006 because property taxes were rising as state shared revenue declined. And then there's a footnote further below with that report. There's quite a bit more later in the document from that report from the Wisconsin Policy Forum, but I decided to come back here and add this statement because I thought that comment might also be relevant to why does the state have a law that says the county can't raise its operating levy at a rate faster than net new construction? So I added that. On the next page, there's another chart. This is page 10. If the page numbers flash up for you as you're moving around in your document. This is an orange and blue chart. It says operational versus debt levy at the top with a red circle on it, and that chart's now removed. And then if you go to the next page, there's a new chart that replaces it. And also the operational levy is shown in blue and the debt levy is shown in orange. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Carroll.
Yeah. Um, it's probably a little easier to read the new version, but I kind of liked the way the original one was, just because it showed the total stacked so that you could see the way it stair steps up because of the debt levy.
Mr. Frank, do you concur with that, or do you feel differently?
I agree with that. And primarily because it reads from left to right, and how that progression goes, whereas I look at the second one, it's going top down, and my vision is left to right. I'm seeing an increase, whereas this one, I'm not seeing that. It doesn't stand out like that.
Okay, so maybe on this one, we can go back to the way it was laid out, but keep probably the background and the way it looks a lot nicer. I wonder if it'd be possible too. I notice up on the screen when Mr. Langreich shows it, it's a little hard to read the numbers. On my iPad here in front of me, it's very easy to read, but I wonder if we just change the text font to white, maybe, or I don't know if there's a way to make that pop a little more.
Absolutely.
I know that sometimes, I know Chair Brewer printed out this report for a WRCO interview, and he had a hard time reading some of the charts that I had created last time around. So anything that could make some numbers pop, especially when it gets printed out, would be helpful. And can I just say how thankful I am that you're on this committee and how lucky we got that someone knows how to use Excel. So I'm just really grateful. So please take all these comments with a lot of gratitude.
Oh, no, it's fine. That's the whole purpose.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Carroll.
The new format that's horizontal, again, as long as they showed them stacked and show the progression, I think that's the key thing. But having vertical columns, like Mr. Frank says, is I guess more visually impactful. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. C.
Mr. Carroll has a fine, pleasant voice. I would ask him to raise the volume slightly.
Will do.
Okay, so let's keep moving on here to the next chart. So the next chart, this was the impact for each department to the tax levy. Started with the sheriff's department on the left, and I believe sales tax on the far right. And we have a new chart now, which shows sales tax at the top and the sheriff's department at the bottom. So thoughts on this chart?
So, yeah, so I would like to see a coloration difference between the revenue side and the expense side. Everything's blue. And when I look at, when I first looked at this, I was looking, oh, everything's blue, revenue, debt, oh, which side is which. The chart prior to that gives some delineation. It gives us the green for the income, and then the red and the orange as a separation. So I'd like to see that separation. I think that'd be more impactful. Don't ask me what colors best, but
Okay. All right. We'll keep, let's go ahead and move on to, this would be the section where we start talking about common misconceptions about different departments. So we start with Health and Human Services. We're striking the chart that shows the amount of their expenses that come from the property tax versus federal and state revenues. So we're striking the orange and blue chart, replacing it with another orange and blue chart, but just with a black background. And white, yes, white letters on the numbers and the percents.
can we get the numbers larger, the actual dollar numbers? I think that would be, or I'm sorry, the percentage numbers. Again, printing it out, that would be helpful.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Unbehan, I'm not sure if I sent you the documents. So the next chart is it shows our HHS employees and which section or division of the Health and Human Services Department that each one is in. So I may not have sent that one to you, but this chart is not replaced. This is the same as it was. So this chart just has blue bars if you keep going down, Mr. Langrick.
I didn't get any of the data for
I didn't.
any chart that I didn't do. I didn't have the data.
I figured in my rush to get things to you, I have things in too many places. So I'll get the HHS employees one to you. And then the next one, this one is about Pine Valley. This is the question about, does Pine Valley make a profit for the county? Does Pine Valley not pay its debt, which is true? And then the charts that we have here, I didn't send those to Mr. Unbehan either, so I'll be working on getting those to him. Same thing with the pie chart right there. At the very bottom, I did add a new phrase below that chart. So if you stay on this page here, I believe this was Supervisor Turk's comment from the last meeting that he thought it should be made clear that it wasn't Pine Valley's choice not to spend its operating profits on paying down or allocating it toward its annual debt payments. That was the county board's choice. And so I've added that phrase in here. Those profits were not used by the county board to offset the operating. I should just read the whole sentence now because otherwise it's not going to sound right. Pine Valley's operating profits could cover 1/3 of its debt payments if those profits were not used by the county board to offset the operating expenses of other county departments. Hopefully that takes care of that issue.
Very incisive by Mr. Cooey.
Mr. Turk.
Oh, it's Mr. Turk.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Turk.
Okay, on the next page, this gets into state shared revenues. That's the third category where we're saying there are misconceptions out there. So at the last meeting, I don't know whether this was someone else's comment or just my own thought as we were going through it, but there is 2022 inflation data out now published by the Federal Reserve. So I added that into the chart. So this chart has now been removed, the one that we're seeing the page of on page 20. And the next chart on page 21 shows the 8.5% inflation that we've seen this year. And this is an estimated number, but the chart at the very bottom lower right-hand corner says 2022 estimate. So it was an estimate on state shared revenue, and it's also an estimate on what state shared revenue would have been if it followed inflation since the year 2001. So that's different there. Then right underneath this chart, there's a lot of new text, and this addresses more directly the point that Mayor Coppernoll was making at the last meeting, that if we're going to talk about state shared revenue going down, we need to explain why it went down. He thinks the public would have that question. So what I did is I used that same Wisconsin Policy Forum report from 2013, and I listed out what that report found about the state's spending priorities shifting after 1995. So I'm just going to read them off here. I want to make sure we're all on the same page because we talked about this for 10 or 15 minutes last time. So things that happened at the state level, according to this report, there was more focus on school aid. There were more property tax credits for individuals rather than governments. Corrections spending rose rapidly as the state built and filled prisons. State funding for Medicaid, i.e. Badger Care, repeatedly rose since its 1999 inception, decelerating state revenues between 1999 and 2012 due to three things: indexing the state income tax to inflation in 99, state income tax rates being lowered in 2000, and recessions in 2001 and 08 to 09. So that was, of course, a 2013 report. I don't know about any other information out there since 2013 on why state shared revenues are still flat to slightly declining. But that's the stuff I was able to footnote because I didn't feel comfortable giving my own commentary. I wanted to this is a nonpartisan group, so that's why I pulled from that report.
Yeah. Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Carroll.
do you feel like we might want to continue to research this to see if there's any more reports bring it more up to date?
Always, I think if we can find more information, absolutely. Yeah, so if you run across any, or if anyone else does, of course, we're open to that.
Okay.
We can always amend this report at our next meeting as well.
Did you say this report is up through 2013?
It was authored in 2013.
I see, so it is pretty outdated.
Yes, it is pretty outdated, but the chart that we are showing just above this text starts in 2001. So actually, most of the years, the majority of the years are covered by the report. I'm not saying that we couldn't use more information, though. Okay, so moving on, continuing on, Ms. Dole was kind enough to, I believe, work with Ms. Hendrickson to update this chart. After the last meeting, Mr. John Cooey came up to me and let me know that there were several errors in this county wage and benefits changes chart. So Mr. Langreich, yeah, there you go. So we've got a new county wage and benefits chart that's on the top here. The one on the bottom has been stricken. Mostly, I think the point of the chart is to show that we have not been giving wage increases to employees in most of the past decade, or at least half the years, if not more. And then also that our health insurance is no longer the Cadillac version. It's more of a mediocre version now. So then if we continue down to the next page. So this is the very last point of the report, and it basically gets into what are the cuts that are being proposed in order to balance the budget in our 5-year financial plan. And there's been a little confusion about what exactly, are these all cuts, or how do things get onto the referendum? We'll talk about this with the press release item and commentary that was in the Richland Observer 2 weeks ago. But what I did is I added a paragraph with 3 points here, so I'll just read through those just to make sure everyone's comfortable with this language here. It says, note that many of these reductions in the property tax levy begin in 2024 and escalate to the amount shown in the following charts in 2027 to account for increasing costs such as wages and benefits. We could also add a phrase about those new positions because we did list those new positions out in previous documents that we reviewed in previous meetings. Departments and committees may meet these reductions to the property tax levy by any of the following methods. 1, decreased expenses. 2, increased revenues from sources other than the property tax levy. And 3, increased revenues from an operating levy referendum. And then in parentheses, it says, assuming such a referendum is recommended by the county board and passed by voters. So I think the thinking before has been you just have to do cuts. And I think what this does is it changes the conversation just a little bit. So it's not that you just have to do cuts. You could figure out how to bring in additional revenues. You could say Sheriff's Department has $1 million identified for cuts. Let's put 800 grand of that on the referendum. Let's put $1 million. It kind of opens the conversation to what should the amount be. What should be a permanent cut? What should go on the referendum for the voters to decide? Let's keep going here. So next page, the old pie chart is stricken out, and these are the, and also, so the charts are placed, but also I changed the title. We talked about the title quite a bit last time. The old title said identified budget amount by 2027. Quite a few people said it should say cuts, but then we talked about this whole issue I just read through. So I have a new title here. It says reduction to the property tax levy by 2027. And then we have 2 charts. The first chart is a bar chart or a column chart. And that shows each area that would see cuts, most cuts on the left to least cuts on the right, and it has the percentages. And then dollar amounts are identified in that left-hand column. And then the next chart is, there are two pie graphs, one pie graph next to the other. The one on the left-hand side shows the whole amount of cuts, the 4 million. There's a small other pie, and that includes a lot of little departments that people have been talking a lot about. So that pie, I see why you did this, Mr. Unbihan. I liked it because it was too much information in that, the way I had it in that old pie chart, I felt. And this really shows the impact of what's happening to the small departments with the cuts.
So the title, Reduction to the Property Tax Levy by 2027, is confusing. I think the initial look at it is reduction to the property tax is what people are seeing. And are we really reducing the property tax at that point? I'm not sure what the word is, but it just seems, what is it? What's the right word? This is the amount that each department has to cut by 2027. Is that what we're trying to say?
Well, I think so, but they could deal with those cuts by increasing revenues. So does that?
Okay, so
Does this,
it's an amount that has to be recovered someplace else other than property taxes.
Yes, that doesn't make a very good title, but
I understand that. I'm trying to find the right words for it,
yeah.
because
You're
to
looking-
me, the reduction to the property tax levy just sounds like we're trying to reduce the property tax levy, which
doesn't it mean reduction of levy to departments?
It does.
We're
I
reducing the
think
amount of
that's
levy.
accurate.
We're reducing the amount of levy allocated to the departments, correct?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Carroll.
Yeah. Maybe instead of getting too complicated with the chart title, we do an introductory sentence or two in the text. And then also, did we talk about whether it's clear whether this is cumulative or just in the year 2027? Just so people are understanding when the hit happens or how much the hit is.
We did talk about that, and I thought about that a little as I was putting these, as I was thinking about these charts, I was pulling them in, and the amounts escalate. They start in 2024 smaller. I was almost imagining a four pie charts next to each other showing the escalating amounts, but I just didn't know if we wanted to show that much detail, but would be more accurate than one chart that just showed 27.
Yeah, it would be nice. You're right. It gets problematic, but it'd be nice to show that this is really just the projection for 2027. There's plenty going on before then.
And then going back to the previous title on that last, on the first chart that's stricken out, the last time I had written this, I wrote identified budget amount by 2027, but just only pulling back there to see if that helps us come up with a better title than both of these.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Langer.
and it's maybe just a game of poetry and wordsmith, but if it makes it more clear, I think the real gist of it is you're trying to reduce your burden on the projected levy expenditures is kind of how I view it, but I don't know if that really might just be a game of semantics.
Reduce burden on,
Projected levy expenditures.
yes, that's another way to say it. I think these are all accurate.
I think they are too. And when we go out to the public and we say, reduction to the property tax levy by 2027, what are they hearing? I mean, we understand some of these terms, we understand what's going on, but what words do we use? And again, I don't have it, I'm trying to generate it here. What words do we use that say these departments are going to be cut without other income? Because just reducing a levy or reduction is one thing, but no, we need to cut these departments' funding at these rates over these years to meet this goal. Now the word.
There's a couple different elements to it, like we discussed about in referencing the numbers that we came up with for the resolutions to give directives, which is kind of the same documents we're trying to collect then to understand what the numbers are for the referendum question. It's a collection of both current expenditures that we're realizing, as well as projected expenditures in the future based on needs, wants, and desires. So it's a combination of both. It's projected expenditures plus actual realized expenditures of services that are being provided now.
I do think that's a good point, because we do have those 4 to 5 new positions that are in the 5-year financial plan. And those really aren't budget cuts, because they're not existing staff positions. They're proposed staff positions in the 5-year financial plan. So that is one potential way that a department or a committee can meet their budget amount that they need to reduce. They could say, well, never mind on the radio tower coordinator. Let's pull that out.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. C.
I was tagging on to Mr. Frank's remarks. I get the impression, and I think it's easy to get the impression, the phrase reduction to the property tax levy sounds like the taxpayers are going to have their property taxes reduced. That's not the case.
Yep, Mr. Frank agrees with you there, and I think we all appreciate the
But it's
lack
sending,
of a good title at this point.
yeah, it's a dissembling message.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Carroll.
do we need to pin this down now, or can we table this?
Well, we certainly don't. I mean, last time the group had comments, and I just several of us worked in the meantime on addressing those comments. We'll do the same thing again. So assuming we adopt this report again with this new information this evening, then we'll come back in 2 weeks and we'll work on the problems we identified, and we'll adopt it again. That's how we determined we didn't want to wait till it was perfect. We wanted to continue to get information out to the public so that people aren't left in an information vacuum.
I would recommend we do some digging on this. I'll be happy to come up with some catchphrases or some phrases that might meet everybody's ideas and thoughts for the next meeting. And yeah.
Maybe we can do a voting exercise. The best title wins.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I know that if I was presenting this, I would obviously clarify verbally if I felt I needed to, and we can always count on that.
Yes. So Mr. Turk gave a presentation to the Land and Zoning Standing Committee. I'm pretty sure he did. You were there. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he did some clarifying.
No, you should watch it. He did a very good job.
Yes, he did. So for any of us going to other committees to explain this, definitely watch that video. Although you can't just copy his video and play it. Steve was proposing that at Land and Zoning, right? He did do a very good job, Dave did. Okay, so any other comments on oh, I'm sorry. And then there's a new section on the very last page under next steps. So I didn't do any changes to the next steps, except I inserted what our role is at each of the committees that this is being shared to. So I took the outline that we approved under a separate agenda item at the last meeting, and I inserted it here. So there's no language change from what we've already approved, but you might just want to read through that. It's actually meant to be there for us so that we don't have to go back to a different document. It's just putting it all in one location. So when we go to those other committees, we share the report, we share our public education plans, we request information needed by the ad hoc committee, and then we collect questions from the committee. So it's more for us than anything else. Okay, any other questions or comments on the report?
Very well done.
Thank you, Mr. Seep. Okay, so I've got a recommended motion here to adopt an updated public education information report to use in communicating with the public, committees, boards, agencies, and other bodies. So does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Carol,
Frank, second.
second by Frank. Any
Discussion?
Yes, Mr. Carroll.
Obviously, we're assuming that the stricken out things will be cleaned up and then it'll be issued.
So so I'd recommend, for example, if you're going to the Public Works Committee, is that tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would not use the track changes document 06B that we were using. I would use the document with all the changes incorporated. That's 06A in our folders.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Dole, can you take a roll call vote on this one?
Carol,
Aye.
Murphy Lopez,
Aye.
Frank,
Aye.
Unbehauen,
Aye.
all voting aye, motion carries.
Okay, so we can go ahead and use that information, and we'll of course come back next time with more changes. So that takes us to agenda item number 7, which I believe just said video. So I talked to Mr. Turk. On top of being busy, he unfortunately had a family emergency, and so he wasn't able to make any videos for us to consider, but he did mention to me when I talked to him earlier today on the phone that it would be nice to get direction from the committee about what topics we would like to see covered in the videos. So what I did real quick this afternoon is I just brainstormed a list of 7 different topics, and it's just meant to be a starting point. So love to get your all's feedback on the topics. Feel free to items can be removed. We can add items, or we can change the content of items.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is the idea that there would be multiple videos so that it's not a long drawn out thing?
That's what I was thinking. Short videos, say 3 to 4 minutes a piece, or 2 to, I'm not sure the exact length, something short.
So what about the things in Richland County? These are all things that have definitely an impact, but are we going to touch on the things that are important to Richland County? The trout fishing, the river, the hills, those things that make us unique, that are also part of the struggle of why we are in a financial situation, everything from building locations to the economy and things like that. Under what does the government do for people? I guess some of the subcategories I'd like to see targeted on that. Items like the wheel tax. There's been some comments, where does that go? Again, as county board members, we think we know because we see the reports, but I think a listing of that, I think you could, a short video on, these are the X highways, video on the highway that you went on, that was been repaired and redone by the wheel tax. UW Richland, I think a video of UW Richland. Here's the money that goes in. Here's what the services are. Here's what the building looks like. These are some of the things that make Richland County unique. The Simon Center, the parks. some of those need to be identified as a positive and that may be affected.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Frank. Go ahead.
Yeah. I guess the thing I'm concerned about is that we need to get clear that how did we get here and why now, and that can be broken down into more than one reason, each with its own video. But to me, those are the way I see the first priority for what we try to share.
So that last question, why is Richland County proposing so many cuts and researching a referendum now? Are you just saying that you think that particular one is
I think
probably the
it
top
could be
priority?
more than one video, and if needed, and one of them being the change in shared revenue, one of them being our efforts to try to make sure we have competitive wages for employees. There's just several reasons, and they maybe each deserve three or 4 minutes.
Well, okay, so the two things you just mentioned, I just want to be careful that we're giving Mr. Turk clear direction here. So the two things you mentioned, I probably should have numbered these, but number 5, why is shared revenue from the state of Wisconsin falling? So that's a separate. The 6th one, how are Richland County employees being treated by its government? I had to write all this really quick, so this might not be the best wording, but I was thinking of the wages and the benefits when I wrote that. So.
Right. I guess my point is that if they are all of a theme, if we kind of make them thematic, like reason 1, 2, 3, and these same things you listed are in fact some of them, but they're all, to me, need to tell the story of why and why now.
So under the Richland County employees being treated, is this a comparison of other counties? Or are we just going to talk about the wages that haven't happened over the years? I know we're doing in the middle of the wage study, but I'm not sure how that reflects on the whole picture. So
Well, last time someone asked that we add wages to the report at that last meeting. Ms. Dole's working with me, and we met last week, and she's going to be adding some charts. She had to reach out to some other counties. So we can get into the wage comparisons to other counties. But that's just one way to approach that. There's multiple, the chart that shows the lack of wage increases over several of the past years that could address it. The amount of employees the county has by department, to Mr. Schmidt's comments earlier. I did send an email out to 15 different counties on Monday, and I haven't even had a chance to open the emails yet, but I'm getting a lot of data back from other counties about how many employees their departments have, and they're similar counties to ours. We're touching ours, so I think that's probably one thing that could go in there as well. I don't know if it's really under that question, but of how our employees being treated, but it does kind of have to do with in the way of what's the workload of employees, and is our workload heavier or lighter than other counties, for each employee. So,
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think this goes to Mr. Schmidt's comment earlier that you want to call it benchmarking or comparison. I think that's probably needs to be part of the story too, that we do have or we don't have typical numbers compared to other peer counties.
So I'm almost wondering if one of the questions could be something like, how does Richland County compare to its peer counties? Like that. Okay, so I'm not really hearing it. Do you want to eliminate any of the questions?
No, this is a good start.
Okay. Do we want to change the wording of any of the questions? Obviously, Dave's going to have some license to create a draft for us. He doesn't have to follow this question exactly, but it's just a topic starter for him. And then he's going to be using the report to pull the information. So it's not going to be a lot of new information necessarily. It's going to be more around messaging. And and what's the tone that we use when we talk to the public in the videos. So I guess what would be great is if we could get a motion to recommend these topics for public education videos on the floor, and then I think we've got at least one we want to add to the list here. So we can do that through an, I could just read off that question now and we can get a motion with all 8 of them together.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the question would be, how does Richland County compare to its peer counties? So I'm looking for a motion to approve the 7 that are on the cover sheet and then that additional question to forward to Mr. Turk.
I move to approve as added.
Okay, motion by Carol.
Frank will second.
Okay, second by Frank. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's all of us. So that motion carries unanimously. So we'll send that on to Dave and then we'll see what he comes up with. Okay, so the next agenda item, this is agenda item number 8, press release. So at the last meeting, Mr. Turk, so this is one reason I was running so late is because he was going to do the press release and through no fault of his own wasn't able to do it. Oh, there it is. I did want to, so Supervisor Severson reached out to me after the last meeting and he said, did you see the column in the Richland Observer about the county's referendum? So I thought we probably just needed to, I meant to attach this, but I didn't have time to take a picture and get it in there. So I think we just, if it's okay with you all, just read it and then the press release that I have drafted, which I drafted very quickly. I just want to make sure we're thinking about what's already been printed in the paper. Okay, so this is under the Richland Ramblings column by Eric Olson, and this was the August 25th edition of the Richland Observer. So he says, is the Richland County Board of Supervisors going to seek a referendum going to ask the citizenry about prioritization to get its finances in shape? There's little doubt that the county politicians would love to include the people of the county in this decision-making process. After all, this appears to be an even more difficult task than the supervisors faced back in the late 70s with the need to construct a new jail. And that decision put more supervisors' seats at risk and led to 1/3 of the board losing their seats. That controversy was resolved when the board opted to build a new jail and government center while leaving the courthouse to remain. It was not the most cost-effective solution, but it was a solution that appeased many who wanted to retain the historical courthouse, which dates back to the 1800s. But is a referendum the answer? Typically, a referendum seeks to do something constructive. In this case, a referendum is difficult to envision because the effort before the board is cutting the budget to live within the means of the county's available funds. The decision to be undertaken is about cutting. It's not about building anything or about authorizing the county to exceed levy limits. That hardly seems as if it would be an easy sell to taxpayers, but neither does the idea of cutting the budget by significant amounts that will almost certainly result in staff or program cuts. It's just difficult to see how such a referendum or even a series of referenda questions should be worded. Maybe there's a need for a system similar to the one used in the recent primary in Alaska. Voters were asked to rank their candidates with the one receiving the most points advancing. Of course, it's a nightmare to determine the outcome, has a winner yet to be determined. The entire situation has not been easy to grasp, and the solution is hardly expected to be easily found. The solution to the problem will not be found without some pain, but is a referendum or a series of referenda really going to provide a course of action except to point out to the supervisors what are the most popular county programs and what are the least? Okay, so, obviously the statements about it's not about building anything or about authorizing the county to exceed levy limits. Obviously, that's not true. That's the opposite of what the first part of his statement is correct. We're not looking to build something. We're not doing a referendum to build a new nursing home or a new courthouse or anything like that. but we are looking at a referendum to exceed the county's levy limits, specifically the operating levy limit. So when I wrote the press release very quickly earlier, I was of course thinking of this in part. I was also pulling from the information document because it's a press release. You know, it's like 10, 12 paragraphs. We can't include a lot. So it's really kind of picking and choosing what do we want to say in this initial press release to the public about what we're doing. So I wonder if, do you all just want a couple minutes to yourself just read through it?
Yes.
Okay, let's just take some time to just each of us read through it. Does anyone not have it? Okay, so I don't know where the committee wants to go with this. If it's not ready, I'd rather we didn't send it out, but if you do believe it's ready enough and it just needs tweaks that we can make in this meeting this evening, I've got a document up on my laptop and I've got track changes on it. Unfortunately, I can't share my screen from my laptop doing that, but I can read things back if people would like to. Of course, we're going to need to wordsmith things and change things.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Carroll.
Yeah. Couple things. If this is going to be the first quote unquote official press release, I think we need to make sure that everyone's messaging like this. In other words, that board members, anyone who might be asked or discuss this, that we're all on the same page. So we need to make sure that we do that. And then just a small item here. In the second to last paragraph, is it time yet to point out the question of whether this would be a one-time or a sunsetted one or an ongoing one, or is that getting too detailed?
In my opinion, I think I don't think we know. And because we don't know exactly what that means, I don't think we should jump. It's kind of like saying, do we know what the dollar figure is to put in here? We don't. I think it goes on. It explains the next job of the referendum committee is to work with the county departments to better understand that. It's what the final, the last paragraph's opening sentence is. I'd err on the side of caution because we don't know, not put it in there. I think this is a good opener to start the process. I would suggest under, find it here quick. I think it's page 1. The state of Wisconsin has 2 laws that limit the amount of property tax a local government can levy. I think there's a lot of questions on that, and I'd like to see if we can annotate what those statutes are. We don't have to type the statutes, but we just put them in what those are, so if people are interested, they can look them up.
So, so let me handle both comments in order. So Supervisor Caro, when I was writing this, I pulled up the resolution that the county board authorized as far as what our job is here. And that was one of the things that we're being asked to do, as we're being asked to develop a question or questions, figure out what the time frame is, when it would go on the ballot, when, was it one time? Is it ongoing or, along those lines? I thought about putting that in, but I just thought it's kind of dry, and we do have to do that, but I'm just not sure that it really speaks about the why we're doing this, and it's not very it's not very storytelling, so that's kind of why that's why I erred toward leaving that stuff out, but I did think about it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Seat.
I agree. Again, I find myself in agreement with Mr. Frank quite often tonight. He must have eaten a lot of Wheaties today. I agree that this is a process, and we're very much in the beginning of that process. Yet we have a lot to learn. We're certainly not there yet, and we're not going to find out what's there until we get there. And that is sort of relevant to what seems to be almost a conclusion from Mr. Olson's remarks, that we're already there and we're already going to make cuts for a specific purpose. We don't even know what cuts we're going to make yet, or how much those cuts are going to be. We don't even know for sure how much money we're going to need. We have some ideas and some parameters, but we don't have definition enough yet. It's a process that we have to continue to be patient with, and I think somehow our messaging needs to reflect that we're not drawing any conclusions here, and it's not the business really of this committee anyway to suggest cuts. Is it?
Well, so
We're not there yet.
Just to reply directly to you, I think the second to the last paragraph that Mr. Carroll was talking about here, I think it does state that the next job of the referendum ad hoc committee is to work with county departments to better understand which budget cuts can be permanent and which may be placed on a referendum to increase the operating property tax levy.
But we need to know from them.
That's correct. Yeah, and I think that's what that sentence means.
Yeah.
It does set a rough parameter of an approximate $4 million budget gap in the 5-year financial plan. So it doesn't get into the details like you mentioned. It's pretty high level. The other thing then, to respond to your comment, Mr. Frank, so I was able to find the footnote, or the state law for levy limits being capped by the rate of net new construction. So I have that in the report. I was not able to find the one about debt being capped at 5% of the equalized value of all property in the county, but I'm sure we could find that. The other thing is that I'm not sure that there might actually be 3 laws, because I added phrase that wasn't in the report. It says unless the voters approve an operating levy increase through a referendum. I don't know if that's tied to one of those two laws or if it's in a separate spot. So there could be up to 3 footnotes, but we could footnote all those before they go to the newspapers.
Yeah, the footnote or just parenthesis what the statute is after the comment.
Would you rather have a parentheses?
I think people will see that quicker than the footnote at the bottom, especially on the printed, if it's going in the paper. I think that's different if it's going to be on the web or something where you could hyperlink it down.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Mr. Unbehan?
Yeah.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do, in parentheses, we'll have to state statutes there. Okay, other comments?
Mr. Chair, we're talking about newspapers. Is there any place else this could be put out as a press release? For example, the county homepage, something like that.
Mr. Langrick, can you answer that question?
I can talk with MIS and see if we can find a place for it. I don't know if they're going to be able to build it off the homepage because that's kind of an older model, but we might be able to build it off the county administrator page, which is a newer model and doesn't require quite as much HTML direct editing.
And maybe a link on the homepage. I know sometimes staff does that too. They put a link
Yep.
on the, and Mr. Cooey's nodding his head, so.
Yep.
What about Facebook?
I think the question there is which Facebook page. We discussed that at length last time. And I think Sheriff Porter mentioned something about, yes, you could put an initial video on the Sheriff's Department Facebook page since it's so popular, but I don't know that, I'm not sure if that's a good idea or not to just target one department. We don't have a county-wide Facebook page, so I don't know.
Well, what about
What other folks think?
the more secular things like Richland County Information Exchange, or the ones with secular admins?
What do committee members think?
Well, me thinking back with what Mayor Coppenall was saying, you want to put it on a Facebook page with the logarithms, how they work, that has the most members, the most traffic, and then from there let it go out. That's what I remembered hearing.
I would agree that it starts out in our control. Where it goes from there, if people want to broadcast it out, that's up to them, but we need to be specific, I think, on where we start that and where we put that out. And have that common source. We're not doing 3 different patterns all over, or you're gonna have to hit them all at once. All the groups in the county, but.
There's nothing to prevent people from sharing it.
Well, it's the plan, that's the idea.
Correct.
Right, but it
the
needs
way
to
that
get
Mayor
on
Coppenall-
social media somewhere initially, because the newspapers, people can't share those.
I think circling back with Mayor Todd would be the best thing to do. To understand exactly how those logarithms work and the best way to do it. But I do recall him saying, in the county, the sheriff's department has by far the highest number of people that are active within that, organization.
Would it be possible to put a press release on all of the county departments' Facebook pages that have a Facebook page, instead of just doing it on one?
Do we know what departments have Facebook pages to have that list and be able to coordinate with them?
Yeah, Mr. Cooey from MIS says that they can get that to us.
Mr. Chair, I guess I want to make sure I know what our charter is. If we go ahead and approve this tonight to go out to the papers, can we just do social media later and just do it? Or do we have to have a resolution in order to do that?
Well, we need direction by the committee to do that. So I think we need to be real clear from this committee. Do we want it just going to the newspapers initially? And do we want to handle the social media question at a future meeting? Or do we want to go the social media route simultaneously with the newspaper. That's our decision tonight.
I would go simultaneous, and I only say that because people will take pictures of the paper and post it on Facebook anyways. And then from there it'll be shared. So my opinion is it should just be a blanket press release.
Okay, let's go around. Mr. Frank, you agreeing?
I agree. It should be, if we're gonna be putting it out, it should go out everywhere. It should be very transparent, and we should make it available. And then we need to be also ready to know that our next press releases are gonna go out the same way, and we keep that pattern going.
Okay, Mr. Carroll, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it should be parallel. We should hit social media at the same time we do the papers.
Okay, Mr. Langreich, do you foresee any issues with directing department heads that report to you to post this on their Facebook pages? I know we have, I know Sheriff Porter, of course, doesn't report to you. We might have another one or two or more elected officials who don't report to you who have Facebook pages, but I'm just asking about with the departments that report to you, do you foresee any issues with directing them to do this?
I don't foresee it. I have a department head meeting, in fact, next Thursday. I'll be able to kind of bring them up to speed if we've got a clear-cut plan on how and when you'd like it delivered.
Okay, and then Sheriff Porter, since you took the time to be at our meeting this evening, I'd just like to ask you as an elected official, do you foresee any issue with being, with sharing this press release on your Facebook page?
I mean, I haven't had a chance to look over exactly what the press release is that you're looking, but I think as I stated at the last meeting, I'm happy to help.
Okay, thank you.
So, what really looking over it, yeah, I'd take a look at it.
Okay. All right, so let's see, the motion, I think we've got feedback from all the appropriate parties who are here tonight. So the recommended motion is to adopt a press release for dissemination to local newspapers. And then I think we'll be adding to that motion and Facebook pages of county departments. So I'll go ahead and make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Anvihan. Discussion?
Should we get any further input from Mayor Carpenal, other locations to hit or ideas?
I think it would be prudent to do that, yes, just because he's got a lot of exposure to social media platforms. And he kind of understands the inner workings of how to spread it fast.
Do we include other government agencies, city, townships, fire departments? Throwing that out.
Well, and I guess one question I have is, do we want to wait to get Mayor Todd's input on other Facebook pages to share this to before we go ahead and do this? Or we could, we can do another meeting quickly, but the 2-week rhythm we're in right now is sort of working for me, and it's pretty demanding already. So I don't want to add new meetings in a short time frame if we don't need to. But
I would suggest a communication with Mayor Carpenal and reflecting his ideas into that. If it's something drastic, then we could have another meeting. But if it's something that is reasonably covered through social media, then that's what we do.
Okay, so is anyone opposed to that idea of just getting Mayor Todd's ideas for Facebook pages to share to and going ahead and sharing it to those?
No, I agree with that.
I agree. I mean, I'm fine with that. And with Mr. Langrick not having a staff meeting until the end of next week, we're on top of our next meeting anyways. About the timing in that perspective on this.
So you mentioned Facebook. I would say social media. I don't know what else is out there that Mayor Carpenal might come up with and say, hey, you should be, there's enough other platforms out there that, we may not want to be prepared for. So I wouldn't just limit it to Facebook.
Do we, Mr. Cooey, do you know if county departments use social media besides Facebook?
Simon's for sure has.
Simon says Instagram, but you're probably not gonna put a press release on Instagram. And the fairgrounds has others as well. Okay. Okay, so, I guess, yeah, maybe if I could just restate my motion, it'd be to adopt a press release for dissemination to local newspapers and, social media of county departments and social media recommended by Mayor Coppernoll.
So move. That's good.
Okay, we'll change it. Scrap mine. Scrap mine, Cheryl. I'm sorry about that. Did you get all that?
Mr. Chairman,
Hold on just a second. Did you get that, Ms. Dole? Okay, so a motion by Frank.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Ambihan. Mr. Seep, go ahead.
yes. Most of the townships have websites, most of the villages, and I know the village of Casanova has a very nice website along with some of their other organizations in the village. And I know that a number of townships as well as villages have websites, and that might be helpful because it would bring the village and township officials up to speed.
And we do have that later on the agenda here, so let's handle it under those items. So we'll get to that. So thanks for the idea. Any other discussion from the committee? Okay, all those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, we're all in favor of that one. Agenda item number 9, script and guests for radio. I'd like to request that we postpone this item. This gets into the part of the agenda that I wasn't able to prepare for. I do know that Chair Brewer contacted me. We actually sat down after a recent meeting, talked about some of the information that this committee already generated, and I know he's working with Mayor Todd to get on the radio. So I do think we probably need to do something else there. I just don't know that we're ready tonight to talk about that with the hour it's getting to and the other agenda items we have here. So hearing no objections, so agenda item number 10, research on other referendums. I know that Mr. Caro volunteered to do this and just wanted to give you the floor here.
Thanks. Yeah, I did my first open records request. I've never done that before. Department of Revenue gets the information from counties and municipalities that do referendums. And so they sent me the information. We can get it in that report in our committee folder here soon, but bottom line is there have not been very many county referendums for funding in the recent years, very few. And so I've reached out to Greene County and Forest County and talked to their county clerks. I've received some information just this afternoon. I haven't even looked at it, but those were the two most recent ones. Greene is a little bigger than us, Forest a little smaller, and so we're going to get a little bit, but I'm not sure it's going to be enough to give us trends. But as I go through that, I'll obviously make some kind of summary report on what it's telling us. I also plan to look at school referendums. There is a lot of that information on the web, and it's a matter of filtering down to the most relevant and similar to what we are faced with, and I don't have that finished yet, but I'll have it for our next meeting.
Okay, just a couple of quick ideas. I think as far as school referendums go, I think River Valley would be a good one to look at since Supervisor Cooey is on the River Valley School Board, and he's talked about they've done several operating referendums.
Janetta recommended that one too.
Okay. And then, of course, the Richland Center School District, I know you all passed an operating referendum. The voters passed that 3 or 4 years ago. There were a couple, I think. And so it'd be good, I think, to look at our home counties operating referendums. I know Kickapoo, where we live, that was probably a debt levy referendum. It is maybe not as applicable.
I was hoping to find counties first, but very few.
I'm sorry, I meant to say Riverdale. as far as the school district. I don't know the difference between them well enough to rattle them off, so. River Valley, not River Valley, Riverdale. Okay, so thanks for that. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Carroll on his research? Okay, let's keep going then. Agenda item number 11, correspondence with other committees. Let's see, I probably need to go back to the agenda item from the August 22nd meeting on this to look at the chart. So this is, if you're on your folders, this would be item 09, committee correspondence. So just checking on these things. We've got myself going to the education committee next Monday. I'm going to be checking in with Supervisor Gentis about that. Supervisor Severson, he's going to the Fair Recycling and Parks Committee whenever they can fit it in, probably after the fair. Mr. Carroll, you're at Finance and Personnel. I know that it's probably the 16th now, and we got Mr. Langreck on the line, so I know he'll make sure to get that on the agenda. HHS and Veterans Standing Committee, we had, I don't think anyone could help me on that one, so I got stuck with that one. That's tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. So I'll be going to HHS and Veterans. Mr. Turk already went to Land and Zoning. I think I'm going to the Pine Valley and Child Support one on Monday, September 19th. It says the 18th, but I should have said the 19th. But if someone else can go to that, that'd be great because I have a work obligation that evening. So that's at 6 p.m. on the 19th. I already checked with Mr. Rislow. He said we could be on that agenda. Yes,
What time was that?
6 p.m.
I signed up to go to the Wisconsin County Association. I don't know how late that goes.
And I signed to go to that too. Did you, Mr. Frank? Okay, so are you available that Monday evening?
So I can let you know
Can you?
tomorrow.
That'd be great. Okay. Yeah, that's my quandary is I have a work thing plus I am going to that conference. So I have to leave the conference for a little bit. So it's way too much for me. So public safety, Mr. Frank, were you able to do that?
Yes, I was. We did that last Friday. Comments came out. Well, first of all, I was not nearly as fined as I understand Supervisor Turk was. So he's getting lots of gold
He's
stars.
tough to beat.
He is, yeah, absolutely. So, the topics that came out after the discussion were the document should show something about the wheel tax and where that money has gone, how much has come in, and then what roads it has touched, what it has done. That's some questions that have come out. The other question came out is UW, how much is funded? What's funded out there? And I think that's kind of a clarification that would be good to have. The comments were very good. The questions about Pine Valley and HHS and all those were clarified very nicely in that document, and UW wasn't. And I think there's some similar clarifications there that would be very helpful. The other thing that came out was specific topics. If you're going to a referendum, it's going to have to be specific topics. Anything general is going to become a wash that people will have lots of challenges with. And lastly, there is some discussion about who do we plan to meet with, townships, different organizations, the Lions Club. What are the different groups we need? Who are we contacting? Who are we meeting with? Who are we presenting this out with? So those are the general comments that came out.
That's excellent. Thank you for those. Thanks for taking that on. Okay, so Mr. Carroll, you've got Public Works tomorrow. Mayor Todd is going to the Richland Economic Development Board on Monday. And then Mr. Frank, are you going to Simon's next Monday as well?
I am, yes.
But that's before the Pine Valley Monday. Okay, so they're
Yes.
they're not overlapping. Great. All right, so we'll keep that on the agenda and look forward to more correspondence from those committees. And of course, we should use the updated document now when we go to the committees and not the old one. So if you have any trouble getting that, just let me know.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we did get the Towns Association scheduled September 21st at 7 o'clock. It's on the county board calendar.
And they're in this room?
Yes.
Okay. Back to the agenda here. It's at 7 o'clock.
Yep, Wednesday, September 21st.
Okay, so that takes us down, that's a good segue to agenda item number 12. So I think last time we talked about Supervisor Severson and you, Mr. Carroll, going to that? Yep. So you're able to do that? All right. And then I'll get in touch with Supervisor Severson and see if he's able to join you for that as well. So I'll keep you posted on that. And then the next agenda item is presentations at Richland Center City Council and school boards. So when I talked to Mayor Todd earlier today, he said that we could come to the city council meeting the first Tuesday of October. Let's see what date that is. 4th. It's Tuesday, October 4th. I don't know the time that they meet. Is it also at 7? Does anyone know?
John,
so, yes.
this is Joanne. City Council meets at 7:30.
7:30. Okay, so Tuesday, October 4th at 7:30. He said he'll make sure we're on the agenda for that one. I was wondering, Mr. Unbehan, if we, because Richland Center School District has the biggest geography in Richland County, if I thought maybe that might be a high priority, that one. Do you know if they have room on the agenda for something like that or not?
Most likely, however, I have to go through the policy handbook to make sure that there's nothing that states that we can't have during a public session, anything that's political and stuff like that.
Okay.
Because some of the policies do, I believe, state that.
Okay.
So I have to get further approvals from the board president. So.
Okay, yeah.
I'll let you know.
If you don't mind asking the board president, and,
Yep.
and we can discuss that at the next meeting then, because I think that might be helpful to help spread the word about what we're up to over here.
The other alternative there could be a public hearing or something where it's a Q&A between the public, this committee, or the members would be talking. But I will vet all that stuff out.
Yeah, and I just have on here city council and school boards, because going to the towns association, that covers all the town boards and the village boards. So I don't know if we need to be prioritizing any other school districts to go to. Do you all have any thoughts on that?
We can always add them later. We have plenty to do already.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's maybe bring that back at the next meeting. Does anyone want to volunteer to go to the city council meeting on the 4th?
Dave would be great for that.
Uh-oh. Because he's not here, he got volunteered. Does anyone object to Dave going to that? Unless Mr. Frank, you wanted to? No. Okay. How about I'll ask Mr. Turk if he's able to do that city council meeting? And right, he's setting the standard for us. And then if not, we'll have another meeting before then so we can find someone else, but I'll ask him in the meantime.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
On the Towns Association, will we have IT support for this kind of display stuff?
Well, and even if, I don't know if it's possible just to set Steve up with the PowerPoint, so that you could just show him how to operate the PowerPoint. I don't know if there's a computer that you all can leave here. I'm not sure if you all need to staff it, do you feel comfortable doing that if they just show you how to advance through a,
Yeah, no problem.
A
I mean,
document?
if that's not possible, we'll just make handouts or something, old fashioned.
okay, all right, so yeah, you can work with Mr. Cooey to figure that out. Okay, so that takes us to number 14, future agenda items. So Mr. Unbehan, do you have any?
I do not.
Okay, Mr. Frank? Mr. Carroll?
No.
Okay, so that takes us to adjournment, so let's figure out.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. C.
I'd like to make a quick comment here. I'm so impressed with the good work that this committee is doing. I hadn't had an opportunity to meet Mr. Uppyhound before, but he certainly made a wonderful contribution to this committee. I thank all of you for your patience with me. I'm very much interested in your work, and I fully support you. But thank you very much, all of you.
You're welcome. Yeah, and we always welcome other county board members to any of these committee meetings. So we're glad you were here tonight. Okay, so we're looking for a date for a next meeting. We were doing them on Mondays. We switched that this week because of the Labor Day holiday. I'm wondering if we want to go back to Mondays. If we do, actually, I cannot do either Monday. I have other obligations on the 19th and the 26th, so.
Believe there's presentations on the 19th as well.
The school board has their meeting that night.
No, from a prior slide on the meeting. Isn't
Yes, that's right, at Pine
there in the
Valley.
evening, Pine Valley, I
right.
believe.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so what about,
I could do the 20th.
okay. We cannot do the 20th because we have a county board meeting that evening. What about Wednesday, the 21st? That sounds, okay, we're getting a full calendar. That's okay. We need a little break here. What about Thursday, the 22nd?
Sure if I have committees that night or not. Just the holiday weeks messed up our rotations.
Okay, would we have MIS support that evening and support from administration? Say you're good. Which night? Thursday, September 22nd. Okay. So do we want to?
Just something to consider.
Yeah, well, no, we don't want to over. Hey, I could use the extra week. It's okay. It's a good excuse for me too. So let's just hold Thursday, September 22nd as a possibility, but what about Tuesday, September 27th?
I can make it work.
Mr. Frank? Okay, Ms. Dole, are you available? Mr. Langreich?
Maybe say that second date one more time, Sean?
Tuesday, September 27th.
It looks clear on my calendar.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, September 27th at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Carol. Second by Frank. All those in favor say aye.
I have something quick on that. So the 6 p.m.s on days other than Mondays do not work well for Mayor Todd. And we don't want to be here any later than we want to be, but to accommodate him, should we push the meetings back to like 6:30?
Oh, gotcha. It's just the time's a little too
The
early.
time, like, yeah.
Okay, does anyone object to 6:30 instead of 6 that evening? Okay, okay. So, let's just vote that one down, I think, right? So all those opposed to that earlier motion say no. Oh, okay, let's get a new motion. It's Tuesday, September 27th at 6:30 p.m. That's when we need to adjourn to. So motion by Frank and a second by Carol. Is that okay? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Sean, for your leadership on this committee.
Thanks, Don. Have a good night.